In the presentation, we'll examine the extent of globalization and cultural impacts based on India, the UK, China and Albania.
Throughout this, we will investigate the differences and similarities between the countries and whether the countries have a low or high cultural convergence.
In comparison to a country like the UK, whose cultural convergence is very diverse with a lot of different cultures, whether it's Hindu culture, Chinese culture, or even some German I've seen sometimes. Albania's culture has been minimally affected from other countries. The small convergence from other countries is usually from other Mediterranean countries like Albania itself, meaning like the countries right around it, like Greece or southern Italy, Croatia, those countries. They have influenced Albania's architecture, as the way they shape or rather style their houses and other buildings has become very similar to each other. And then there's also the fashion. Actually, fashion in the Mediterranean area itself has been influenced a lot by Western clothing, as in a lot of jeans or miniskirts and suits, and just a lot of Western style clothing has been brought over from the West to the Mediterranean countries, which is rather unusual to their own original and cultural clothes that they usually wear. Technology has also been is a big factor in the culture of Western countries compared to Albania itself, because in the West, like here in the UK rather, you will see a lot of kids around on their laptops or on their phones, always playing games and chatting with their friends on things like Skype or something. And then in Albania, even if they have access to the computers, which about 80% of the children do not outside of school, they will still play a lot of outdoor games, like hide and seek is actually the most popular game that they play, rather than just spend all their time on computers and other devices. So Albania's culture of always, that idealism has also stayed the same, has not been influenced in any way significantly by other countries. They're still very friendly and open to even the most random strangers. They have a policy of our door is always open to anyone. They will rather go hungry themselves than let someone starve or have insufficient food, even in the smallest amount, because they believe to be friendly and open with all countries, all strangers.
Globalisation defines the process of an organisation or business developing international influences, which therefore result in a more interconnected world as a result of an increase in trade and cultural exchange. Globalisation can be seen as a way to make the world more culturally converged, as learning more about the trade and culture of other countries allows you to be more connected with them in the sense that you are understanding them a bit better, thus meaning that you can adapt certain aspects of their lifestyles into yours. Since everyone has become more aware of it, globalisation has increased the production of goods and services. Due to the UK being one of the most popular places for immigrants to come and start their new lives, in the year ending March 2016, net migration to the UK was 327,000 people. There have been a lot more innovative businesses, products and services being offered to the British public. While I do not promote stereotyping or racism, it is true that since we have had more Indian migrants in the UK, the amount of curry houses have increased substantially, with the UK reaching approximately 12,000 curry restaurants. In 2015, it is clear that the British public are loving the Indian cuisine. This shows cultural convergence, as not too long ago it would be difficult to find even one curry restaurant. Another way in which this shows cultural convergence is the fact that it is becoming more and more popular for white British men to be employed as waiters in these curry houses. When curry houses were first opening in the UK, all of the staff were Indian. This was not only so that it was easier for all the staff to understand each other and the menu, but not a lot of white people wanted to work in curry houses. On the other hand, now Indian restaurant owners have started employing white English waiters. This is a great example of cultural convergence, as it shows that British and Indian people are becoming more and more converged, and they are becoming more and more able to live alongside each other and embrace each other's cultures.
In this section, I'll compare India and the UK and the convergence of it. I'll be describing three main topics, and that is design, food and language, and going into detail on why they've mixed. My first one is about design. I've got a quote here which states from the Foreign Office Minister, Hugo, and it says this: it spells a single word, India. Before this quote, he is describing his office, and he describes the gold lettering on the fireplace, and he's describing all about the different little bits of culture, the hints of India that are in his office. And that just shows the convergence of India and the UK converging together. Obviously, if you go into an office and have little bits of style in there, you're going to show them both together. My second point is about food, and this is probably one of the major points of the convergence and probably one of the most obvious points. If you were to, it's quite a common thing now, especially part of English culture, to go with your friends and get a takeaway, to go down to your, about 10 minutes away to your local restaurant and go out for a curry. It's become so common to do that it's a normal thing. As well, if you go into like Sainsbury's, Tesco's, any supermarket, they actually have an aisle, the world food aisle, and that's got Indian, Chinese, it's got different cultures in there. This shows the impact of Indian and UK conversion together, and it just shows that. I do have a quote about from Mintel, and it says that overall about Indian takeaways, that's ready-made meals and takeaways, and it showed that they made 653 million in 2015. That's quite a substantial amount of number to make, and it just shows the impact that India's had on the UK. And lastly, my final thing is about language. And I have a quote again here, and this is from the Indian Times, and it says this: nearly 60% of Indians speak a language other than Hindi. And when you look into the article further, it goes on to describe English. Britain's UK is it's a global national language of the world, and it just shows the effect that globalisation has had on India and the UK, and it shows that the conversions together show this language.
About China and the UK and the differences and similarities between them. Lifestyle-wise, for the UK, they work individually rather than collectively. That's for an emphasis on individual rights. Rather than China, they work as a collective whole as a country. When China are greeting people, they ask questions. For example, have you had dinner? Thus confusing Britain as they would see as a way of greeting, as just general questions. More so weather-wise and culture, hot and rainy days, UK use umbrellas for rain and storms, whereas China will use umbrellas for the sun to shield themselves from pale skin. Here shows that they are very different but similar. Furthermore, the Chinese work hard in comparison to English people. They go out early and go to bed early. They do not have a drinking culture and focus on providing for their families to achieve a good education and to allow them to get far in life. Moreover, between them very similar in political culture, China have introduced a two-child policy in 2015, for they wanted to improve the balance and development of the population. Now there is about 30% of China's population that are over 50 in the 1.36 billion of them in the world. Now couples and existing families are allowed to have at least two children, rather than having one child. In comparison to the UK, the government have responded similar to how the Chinese reacted to population growth. During mid-2013 to the mid-2014, there was an increase of 491,000 people. Simon Ross, the chief executive of Population Matters and Promoting Sustainable Family Size, said that getting people to have more than 2 children is dead easy, because that's what's happening across the world anyway. It's irresponsible to have more. Here then you can see that they are very similar, whereas China is usually known for having an autocratic country system. They still have the same approach to dealing with their population, as well as having quite a similar cultural way, as the Chinese language is quite used very frequently, as well as the UK one. So here they interconnect, as well as understanding each other's population size and how they do with work ethic and lifestyle ethic.
In conclusion, each country has differences that do affect cultural convergence. For example, China has a low one, India is middle, and Albania is high, and that shows the amount of impacts that it has on each other.
Overall, each country can be influenced by each other, thus proving that globalisation does lead to cultural convergence between the modern cultures.